Hi, I'm Cheryl Waters. You're listening to Live on KEXP at Home, and today I have Alex Lahey and Gordi, Sophie Payton with me. Welcome. It's so wonderful to see you.
Hello.
Thank you, Cheryl. Nice to see you too.
And you're streaming with us today from Australia. I just asked you what day and time it was. You're a day ahead of us, and the next morning from me. But where are you exactly? We're in Australia.
We're in Melbourne, in Melbourne, Australia, and we're in the future. The future's bright over here.
That's wonderful. In general, how are you two holding up? How are things going right now?
Yeah, we're going okay. I think we're relatively lucky down here in Australia. Things are, are probably as normal as they can be. We've been having a few kind of snap lockdowns in the context of COVID, but I've actually been playing live shows again, which feels surreal in the current age that we're living in. But 2020 was not what either of us had expected it to be, like most people around the world. But fortunately for us, it was just sort of a gross inconvenience more than anything else. So yeah, we're faring pretty well.
I'm so happy to hear that you're playing live shows. I have not heard anyone say that in a while, and it really just must feed your soul. You recently released the new song together, DINO'S, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's just a perfect mesh of your two distinct styles of music. I want to ask you more about that, but let's watch that together now. It's Gordi and Alex Lahey live on KEXP at Home.
Down at DINO'S, air was thick as honey. You were looking just as sweet. Heard a place is nicer, didn't have the money, but at least we could escape the heat. Waiting for our number, you drank a mimosa out of a plastic cup. As you sat there drinking, you bet I was thinking, where will this night end up? There was a waitress on the telephone. There was a method actor drunk, a kid with a fake ID and confidence, and then there was us. Being without you seems a tragedy. I don't have words to give you now. I wanna have our own vernacular, all of the things I would say, but I don't know how. Laying across the table, wanted to get closer. I was trying to take your cues. I suggested that we go to karaoke, but you'd bought your dancing shoes. There was a greatest hits on the stereo. There was a nun drinking her doubt. There was a young boy making promises to a Dolly Parton cardboard cutout. Being without you seems a tragedy. I don't have words to give you now. I wanna have our own vernacular, all of the things I would say, but I don't know how. Because without you I lose sanity. All of the things I would say, but I don't know how. Being without you seems a tragedy. I don't have words to give you now. I wanna have our own vernacular, all of the things I would would say, but I don't know. All of the things I would say, but I don't know. All of the things I would say, but I don't know how.
That's Alex Lahey and Gordi live on KEXP at home. That beautiful song called DINO'S just recently released. Your voices sound so beautiful together. How did you approach writing something that sounds both like an Alex Lahey track and a Gordi track?
I think the trick was just not to think about it too much. Like we went in, well, we were in Nashville at the time, which is where the actual DINO'S is and where we were sort of frequenting it. And when we decided to write a song together, it was just, let's just write a song together. And it was for no particular project or particular vision or aim or anything. And I think that's why there is a balance there, because we weren't really trying to do one or the other, and so naturally it just became this like quite a nice like I suppose like meeting in the middle of what we both kind of do.
And you haven't had a chance to, well, actually maybe you have, now that you said that you're performing live. Have you had a chance to perform that live in front of an audience? Because the video that you made for us is absolutely beautiful, and I'm wondering how different it feels and sounds to perform it in front of an audience.
Yeah, we have actually performed it a few times now on this tour that I've been doing for my record, and we've done it in a kind of multitude of ways. We've sort of done like a stripped back version with like, you know, I mean, like we have done for you guys with the sort of like guitar harmonium kind of vibe. But then we've done it with my full band, which is like, you know, a much more kind of rocky moment, particularly in my set. So yeah, it's so nice to kind of feel it come to life. And, you know, I think throughout the whole creating process for this song, we were both just really keen to watch each other work and, you know, keen to kind of learn from each other, and gave each other lots of space to sort of do our thing. And I think that's, you know, that's why it ends up in both in the recorded and the live sense being such a nice kind of hybrid of us both.
Yeah, I think now that we've done it like a few times, yeah, it's like, I remember when we played it last time at one of your shows in Melbourne, and like we came off and we were like, wow, that really like rocked, you know, for the first time. It's like all of the like any sort of tentativeness towards it, now that we've had a couple of goes at it, it's like, wow, this is like quite rocky, which is cool.
It's fun that you can make it a rocker as well. That harmonium in the video that you made us is just so beautiful. And Sophie, you were playing it in that song DINO'S. Alex, you play it later in a video we're going to watch. It's such a beautiful instrument. Sophie, you're very facile on a number of different kinds of keys, but how did you discover that instrument and start playing it? And is it hard to pick up? I mean, did you show Alex how to play it, or did you already know how to play it?
So I bought it on kind of the Australian equivalent of Craigslist. We have a thing called Gumtree, and a few years ago, I was doing the radio station we have here called Triple J.
Know it well and love it.
They do a segment called Like a They do a segment called Like a Version, and I was doing it Linkin Park's In the End, and I just kind of wanted, I wanted something that looked like, you know, looked a bit odd on screen, but something that was going to really add to the whole vibe. And so I was kind of just like, doing deep dives and like stumbled across this harmonium. And so I drove out to Western Sydney and bought it from this lovely Indian woman named Barbara for like $400. And then I went home and just kind of learned how to play it. And Alex can probably attest to the fact that it does almost just play itself. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, do you think that you could play harmonium in this like, you know, acoustic version of Sandwiches? And she was like, probably. And then, yeah, you just kind of start pumping it and start playing the notes. But people have often asked me on stage, like, what it is, and most people think it's a file of facts. And I'm like, why would I bring a file of facts on stage?
It's always a bit of a something that slows you down at airport security for sure. Going through the conveyor, because you can only like take it on board with you. And I remember like one time I was with you at the airport, and like you're like, this always slows us down. And then there was this Indian guy working in security. He's like, is that a harmonium? He's like, I haven't seen one of those in years. And he was so stoked.
I love it. It's a conversation starter. Well, you said that people are always asking you what it is. And after I watched that video, I actually tried to Google it, and I looked up pump organ, and I saw that that's not what it was. It took me a while to try to like come up with phrases to describe what I thought that it was, to finally figure out that it was a harmonium.
No, there are heaps of like different names that people call it, and I like when I've been trying to find like replacement parts for it, it's actually a total nightmare because it has so many different names. Anyway,
do you have a name for it, like that you call it by?
I call it Babs after the Indian lady Barbara.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Does she know the journey that her harmonium has taken? Do you know? Or?
I don't suspect that she follows me on social media, so probably not.
You never know. You made a fun video for DINO'S as well, and you played a whole cast of characters, a nun, a cowboy, a bouncer, a waitress, might be some others I'm not thinking of. Are those all characters that you encountered at DINO'S, or did you just have fun with that and make them up? And what was your favorite one to portray? If I'm going to guess for you, Alex, I'm going to say the cowboy. You really just seem to embody that one and have fun with it.
Definitely.
Yeah, the cowboy is pretty fun. I have to say, getting those chaps on and off was pretty annoying, though. There's a lot of like denim and suede, like really sticks to each other. So when you try to take, like, put it on and off over your jeans, it's a real pain. But yeah, I can't say that we did encounter all of those actual sort of people when we were at DINO'S, but I think it's definitely representative of, I guess, the eclectic crowd that do come through. The one thing that is true is that there is, in fact, a Dolly Parton cardboard cutout at DINO'S, and anyone who's familiar with DINO'S would know that it's one of its most sort of iconic features. And we managed to get a Dolly cutout online. And actually, when we went to film the clip, we got there and realised that we'd left Dolly at home. So we had to do another round trip, like all the way to pick up Dolly, because the show wouldn't have been able to go on without her. And she's actually right next to me now. She's not going anywhere.
Well, I did notice that she was in the video, and I was going to ask if you absconded with that from DINO'S.
It would have been a total witch hunt if we had, like, just after we left Nashville, someone actually did steal the Dolly cutout from DINO'S, and there was a witch hunt via social media. People were like, Dolly was taken between the hours of like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on Thursday night, and some unfortunately returned her, I think, purely out of shame.
Yeah.
Well, she's certainly an icon and an inspiration to many of us, musicians or otherwise. Alex, you've cited Dolly as an influence, and again, I think it's fair to say she's such an inspirational and aspirational figure musically and otherwise. She's really amazing. And you had that cardboard cutout in the video you made for us, and I have to say she almost stole the show. She's just so electric, but not quite. But it's also fun to see. I'm assuming you're in a studio. You've got all those wonderful inspirational albums in the background. I found myself while listening to you trying to look closely and see who they were. I saw Brittany Howard and Rolling Blackouts Coastal Fever, who I love, another band out of Melbourne, and the Pretenders there, Hoodoo Gurus. Alex, you mentioned in an interview that you had been spending the past year kind of digging into back catalogs of some bands, and you said, it's always a treat to find heaps of music to enjoy. And I just really loved reading that, because one of the things that I'm always thinking, and especially as a DJ who has direct contact with listeners who tell me, oh my goodness, I've never heard that artist before. Thank you so much for playing them and helping me discover them. And sometimes it's someone who's been around for 10 or 20 or more years. And I just love the recorded format that artists are always there to be discovered, whether you're discovering them, the year they begin their career, or whether, they've been around for decades, or, maybe tomorrow an artist will discover Nina Simone for the first time. So I could really relate to that feeling of digging into an artist that's new to you and then just being excited about all the music that's there to enjoy. And it just made me wonder what you've all been listening to lately.
I think with that particular statement in that interview, I would have been referring to Rilo Kiley. I had never really listened or knew about Rilo Kiley, to be honest, until I started getting into Jenny Lewis, of course. And it was a real treat for me to go back and look up this band that had all these records, and I was so excited about it. And it was just like exactly the music that I would have loved like at the time that it did come out, and I just didn't know about it. But also now it just made me feel so good, and I was so inspired by it. Another sort of like thing that really made me, especially over lockdown, that made me kind of go back into back catalogues was I bought this like Tascam 4-track tape machine, and I was really curious to find out what records had been made on a similar piece of equipment. So like, of course, like Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska is like the famous like Tascam 4-track record. But I was going back and listening to some stuff that I never really like would have listened to. And one of those is, I think it's the first Iron and Wine record is made on the same piece of equipment that I've bought. And so sort of looking, sort of listening to these like very early kind of like frankly, like primitive sounding folk kind of records was something that I really got into for a little while there. And also like, I guess it was fittingly introspective for the lockdown period. Anyway, very isolationist way of making music. So those are a couple of really cool things that I've been listening to. What about you?
Yeah, last year in lockdown, I read the Janis Joplin like biography, and so then kind of just did a deep dive on Janis Joplin, which I'd never like really done before, and tried to make a playlist of every like artist that they'd mentioned in the biography, every artist that was kind of, you know, floating around that she, like with her or she was influenced by, like Otis Redding and like Big Mama Thornton, and yeah, just like a you know, a totally different era that I wouldn't have kind of stumbled across if not for, you know, a proper deep dive. So yeah, lockdown was definitely good for something in that regard.
I'm going to have to check that Janis Joplin book out. I'm a big fan. And Iron and Wine, not a month goes by that I don't listen to Our Endless Number of Days or The Creek That Drank the Cradle. Those are iconic albums. So good. They definitely stand the test of time. And again, it's just so great to know they're always there and someone might discover them anytime. And Sophie, you mentioned when you were getting ready to write or in the midst of writing Our Two Skins that you were listening to our girl Sharon Van Etten and The National. So it sounds like we definitely are kindred spirits in music for sure. Love all the same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you made some beautiful recordings for us. I'd love to share a couple more with our listeners. I'm Cheryl Waters here on KEXP and speaking with Alex Lahey and Gordi live on KEXP at home. Here's a Gordi track called Extraordinary Life and Alex Lahey's Unspoken History. Enjoy.
Your voice, it came to me the clearest I had heard. Those many nights where I lay hanging from your every word. And in my bloodstream you did multiply and then walk down an avenue and take me to the end. It's like you're in my chest, it's like you're in my lungs. Took something ordinary, I set it for a run. The way I need you now is more than to survive. I wanna give you an extraordinary life. Divergence underneath. took something ordinary, I set it for a run. The way I need you now is more than to survive. I wanna give you an extraordinary life. One, two, three. We have an unspoken history we don't want. Wanna let it go, but for reasons I don't know I can't. We used to have it so together, we couldn't be undone. We used to do it till it wasn't fun. I got tired of feeling that you weren't the same. Couldn't understand why you weren't the one to blame. We used to be unbeatable. You used to be my saint. Now I fear that it might be too late. I don't want you to go. But you won't never know. We couldn't play the roles we were assigned. Wasn't any space with everything on your mind. We ended up perforated. I was just a kid. Tell me if it's something that I did. I don't want you to go. But you won't ever know.
That is Alex Lahey and Gordi live on KEXP at home. Thank you so much for making those recordings. They are absolutely beautiful. We talked about the studio and the albums and how it looked a minute ago. Where is that and where did you record that? The sound is gorgeous.
Yeah, we did it in Melbourne at a little place called Small Time, which is kind of like it's a bar, a pizza restaurant, and it also has like sort of a studio in it. But it's run by some people we know, and they were really generous in letting us come around and record a few songs in their kind of booth essentially. And they did such a beautiful job. We just kind of loaded in on a Sunday morning and started playing, and it was like both Alex and I were commenting, it was such a nice experience to just play. Like we sort of hadn't really like ironed out the details of what each of us would be doing for the other one, and we were like, let's just kind of, I don't know, see what the vibe is. And so Alex would start to play a song and she'd be like, oh, why don't you play that synth like in this kind of like in this zone for that, and then I'd play a song and I'd be like, why don't you jump on this, and like do this. So it was just a really like free flowing thing, and I think both of us are quite used to playing like full band sets that eventually when you're on tour you get quite locked into a structure for most of the set. So it was really beautiful to just play music.
And just a fun fact on that note, Mimi Gilbert, who was in our film, who's in the DINO'S film clip. She's the girl with the short hair. She's actually the pizza chef at Small Time, and says you do in fact have to throw the dough in order to get it right. But another thing about Mimi is that she's just released an awesome record that I reckon you'd really like, Cheryl, so you should check it out. But also a great pizza chef.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for the recommendation. And really, what more could you ask for a bar, a thrown pizza place, and a recording studio? It did look like you were enjoying making those songs, and I thought they sounded great. But I could tell that you did as well, because at the end of the songs, you kind of would look at each other and just have these sweet little smiles. And I don't know, that just really added something as well. Despite this year in lockdown, which you're sort of coming out of a bit, you've both been incredibly busy. Beyond DINO'S, Sophie, you released your second LP, Our Two Skins, over the summer, which we've absolutely been loving at KEXP. And Alex, you released a quarantine-inspired EP, Between the Kitchen and the Living Room. And did the extended time in isolation and being off the road spark additional creativity in both of you? Because it sounds like you didn't really stop creating.
Yeah, I felt it was really nice to sit still for a bit, to be honest. Like, I mean, part of me feels that because I love to be on the road and playing shows so much, like, I probably wouldn't have had the willpower within myself to sort of like stay put for a little bit unless it was forced upon me, as it was, as awful as it was though, but nonetheless. And I actually did get really creative and feel really inspired to make as much music as I could. Whenever I'm on the road, I'm always like, oh, if only I was at home, I could write more songs. And then, the world gave me that opportunity. And I'm very pleased to say that I took full advantage of it. So, yeah, I mean, the Between the Kitchen and the Living Room reworks was almost like a project of catharsis. And I'm really glad that I did it, and I learned heaps from doing it. And I think it also like gave me a bit of closure to kind of move on to the next thing as well. And since since finishing my previous record, I've now written like a real big amount of songs, and I'm already working on what's next. And it's been really nice and really great to sort of be able to piecemeal the next thing together, as opposed to have to do it so intensely between tours and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really enjoying this kind of new process that that circumstances have kind of like led me into.
I know that from reading in interviews that you're also very interested in getting more into producing. Is that producing your own records or producing for other people, or what's going on with that for you, or what are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm really interested in, and I feel like it's just kind of like, especially as a songwriter, a bit of a natural progression. And, with the Between the Kitchen and the Living Room EP, I recorded and produced all that myself in this very room, which was a really fun experience. And obviously DINO'S was a co-production that we did together. And yeah, I think I think for my own records, I do enjoy collaborating production-wise, and I think that there needs to be a little bit of an outside kind of like eye and ear into what I do. Not because there has to be, but that's because like that's the process that I enjoy. I'm a very social creature, and like that really suits me. But I'd love to do more production for other artists, I especially like young queer females who are looking to make music. That's something I love to support and get involved in. But I mean, just generally, the fact of the matter is that I love making records, and the more records I can make, the happier I am.
Sophie, I know it was last summer, but we haven't had a chance to talk to you about Our Two Skins, your most recent album. I know it was a deeply personal account of your life and your relationships. You spoke about needing to come to terms, speaking publicly about these private moments in your life and how difficult that was. But ultimately, I think very important, you wished that there was more of that for you to have access to and discover. So you really help a lot of people by doing that. With a few months between you and the record release and now playing these songs live, how does it feel to have these stories out in the world?
Yeah, it feels, like a record release often does, where you have such personal moments, and particularly for me on this record, and then you sort of, you gift them into the universe and they're no longer just yours. And I think, the whole process for me was, what was a difficult one to navigate. I was sort of, realising new parts of my own identity on the sort of backdrop of Australia voting on the same-sex marriage debate. And I saw this amazing piece in New York called Nanette, which was like a one-woman show by Hannah Gadsby, which is actually now a Netflix special as well. You can watch it. And that kind of really added fuel to that whole fire for me. It was such an exceptional show, and was a real influence for the record, for me. But I think, most artists and songwriters could probably agree that it's hard to tell exactly how something resonates, a body of work, until you're playing it to real faces and real bodies and real people. And I've finally had the opportunity to do that, at least in Australia, the past couple of months. And, it's been wonderful. Like, people have sort of, come up and said a whole range of things, and, that they've, it's helped them through a particularly challenging moment of their life. And that's what I felt like it did for me. And that's a really wonderful outcome.
It sounds like you were going through a challenging time, I might even say turmoil, from reading some of your interviews when you were writing the record and you channeled it into those songs. However, it sounds like the recording process was quite magical, and you worked with a couple of extraordinary producers. And I wondered if you could paint a bit of a picture about what that experience was like and where you went and made that record, because I felt very envious. I wish I could have been there during that process.
Yeah, honestly, it was like the best time of my life. It sort of begins in 2018. I was touring with an artist named S. Carey, and I was playing kind of keys and guitar in his band, and we were traveling around America for 6 or so weeks. And I was in a van with him and with Sean and his whole band, which included Zach Hansen, who was drumming, who I'd previously met when he was drumming for The Tallest Man on Earth in Australia. And then I spent 6 weeks sitting in the back seat of the bus next to Chris Messina, who was doing front of house for Sean and is sort of like the right-hand dude in Bon Iver, does a lot of collaborating with Justin. And throughout the process, I was kind of making demos on my laptop in the back seat of the bus. And at the end of that time, Chris and Zach were like, we don't know how you're going to make a record, what you want to do, but we just want to kind of throw our hat in the ring and say that if you wanted to make it with us, we think that'd be really cool. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't even know what it's going to look like yet, but I'll keep that in mind. And then at the end of 2018, sort of the end of the story of my record, was that my grandmother passed away, and that's what the song Sandwiches is about. And her and I were very, very close. And I grew up kind of 100 meters from her on my parents' farm in a little town called Canowindra. And that sort of coincided with me finishing this record, and I just had a real urge to kind of be at home. And so I sat down with my manager at the time, and I was like, I want to make an album. It's going to be called Our Two Skins, and I want to make it in a cottage on this farm in a period of 4 weeks next year. And then we just kind of started to make plans for it. And I emailed Chris and Zach and was like, how do you guys feel about coming to Canowindra for 4 weeks next year? And they were like, hell yeah, we would love to do that. And so we basically compiled an enormous spreadsheet of all the gear and bits and bobs that we were going to bring. And the kind of main rule was, we want the bare minimum. Nothing should be there that doesn't really kind of spark joy or create inspirational sort of moments. And so Chris and Zach flew over with 13 road cases of gear, all which got lost on the flight over, but then fortunately found again. Arrived in Sydney, and then, we set up in this little cottage for 4 weeks, and we go in every day, play some music. Chris would light some incense, and then we'd just kind of start, playing something, and that would lead to us recording one of these songs. And we had each song on its own piece of paper, stuck up on the wall, and one by one we just kind of would go through, record them, and at the end of 4 weeks we had an album.
It sounds amazing, and I understand that you were just unplugged from everything, which just doesn't happen much anymore. We don't really immerse ourselves in entertaining ourselves anymore. I know myself, I'm so connected to the internet and my phone. I just don't like it. I wish I could go back sometimes to a simpler time like that, or at least for a month period of time, which seems hard, but I imagine so rewarding.
Yeah, it really was. It's the kind of you'd have your phone holding it up outside trying to get a couple of bars of reception. But I was, very thankful to not. And the only things we really had to account for was at about 4:30 p.m. each day, there was a window that looked kind of down onto these fields, and there's a big gum tree and cockatoos, which are a beautiful but very annoying Australian bird, would congregate in this tree every day at 4:30, and we called it witching hour. They would just continue to absolutely go off, and so we'd have to take a pause in recording and just either record synths or go for a long walk.
I love it. Sophie, I know you worked as a doctor and left that world behind to tour, only to be brought back to medicine due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know that the situation ended up being more under control in Australia, and ultimately you weren't called to work, which I guess is a good thing, that you weren't needed. But I'm wondering, I know that both your music and, your medical career is important to you. How has the constant back and forth affected your mindset transitioning from music to being a doctor?
Yeah, so that was definitely the state of things in the first half of 2020, but then actually Melbourne experienced a pretty hectic second wave of COVID, and I actually ended up getting called in, and so I did essentially 4 months of work in hospitals over our sort of, I guess from sort of September until the end of January. It started off as just sort of casual shifts, because then I was still trying to do music stuff, but then it sort of led to a full-time position from December, from November through to January. So it was quite a jarring experience, because in the month of sort of July and August, I had been in Sydney and the record had come out. We did this live streamed show to an empty Sydney Opera House, which was quite wild. And then, was doing a bunch more sort of press for the record. And then I got the call that they needed more junior staff quite urgently back in Victoria. And so I travelled back. And I kind of rocked up on my first day back at the hospital, and, got to the entrance of the ward of this hospital I'd never been to before, and had to don the sort of level 4 PPE, which essentially means you're wrapped in plastic for an entire day, and then went into the ward, and there was, this hospital was particularly badly hit by the second wave, and so there were patients sort of spilling out from the designated COVID wards, and I was in a kind of palliative care ward, and, where they're used to people sort of slowly drifting off. And this time it was, people with quite serious interventions who were really, really unwell. And the like huge numbers of staff were being furloughed, meaning sent home for 2 weeks because they'd been exposed to COVID. And so it was just incredibly understaffed and an incredibly stressful period. And then, it got a bit better over our summer. By the end of January, we were back down to just masks instead of sort of the full PPE. And a week later, I was back on the stage in Brisbane and then in Melbourne. And it's like, I think the only way that I can really do it is to not think too much about it, and you just, go where the current is taking you at that point. And I do, not to make too many water references, but I do feel like sort of medicine and music, they're kind of like two different tides in my life. And I just have to pick which one is kind of surging forward at that moment and jump onto it and kind of go with it.
That's incredible. Well, I'm really happy to hear that the numbers are going down now. And it does sound like things are opening up. I'm so happy that you made these beautiful videos for us. It was so wonderful to hear you and see you in a studio, and the tracks you recorded, so beautiful. Let's listen to a couple more. We have an Alex track from your first EP, B Grade University, this song called Wes Anderson, and then Sandwiches, which we talked about, the song about for your grandmother from your album Our Two Skins, Gordi. You're listening to Alex, Lahey, and Gordi live on KEXP at Home.
Stayed in the shower to avoid doing some useful shit. My fingers went wrinkly and my hair had had enough of it. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. I slept in this morning 'cause your bed is so much better than mine. You had left for uni, so I changed my phone's alarm time. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. 'Cause you're on my mind and you're and I think you'll find if we rewind, the trouble never finds a place to land. Every day with you's my lucky day. To the movies, 'cause I know you like Wes Anderson. You held my hand the whole time, and no joke, you have the softest skin. Oh, 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 oh. 'Cause you're on my mind and and I think you'll find if we rewind, the trouble never finds a place to land. Every day with you's my lucky day. Take it day by day. You can be the one to drive me home, sitting in your car. We're telling stories in a no-standing zone. Oh, 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 oh. 'Cause you're on my mind and you're all mine. You're the best night's sleep I've ever had, and I think you'll find if we rewind, the trouble never finds a place to land. Every day with you's my lucky day.
Your cold hand was underneath as you slept. We made sandwiches and then they said you had left. I read words that someone wrote as we cried, and I tried to think of all the times you told me you were tired. You'd be on the phone every time we'd get home, and I think I thought you'd be there. Wherever she goes, I have tried to recall how your cashmere sweaters melt, and I've spent countless days recounting your hairspray and how you felt. Oh, I'll let you go is what you'd say to me, and now it's I that has to let you go to where you have to be. You'd be on the phone every time we'd get home, and I think I thought you'd be there. You'd be on the phone every time we'd get home, and I think I thought you'd be there. When I think of you, a movie reel of moments plays. We'll be in the car or after mass on Saturdays. You'll be walking down the driveway, you'll be in your chair. You'll say, see you round, or say you're 3 and now you're everywhere. You'd be on the phone every time we'd get home, and I think I thought you'd be there. Wherever she goes,
Alex Lahey and Gordi live on KEXP at home. Alex, it's been nearly 2 years since your album, The Best of Luck Club, was released. We did just talk about the EP that you worked on in this past year, but I believe that you were touring when the U.S. lockdown first hit, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just about to go. I was in the US, I was in Los Angeles, and I was just about to fly to London to start a tour with a band called The Regrets. And I think it was like 24 or 48 hours before I was set to go to London, I got the call that the Australian borders were closing and I needed to get home. So that was a pretty wild ride. That was sort of that window of time where everyone was rescheduling all their shows and hoping that we'd be back in a couple of months, and alas, didn't happen. But yeah, it was I was in LA when it was all sort of like starting to shut down.
What songs were you most enjoying performing at that point? Do you remember? You were just kind of getting started at it.
Yeah, I think we'd done already a tour for the Best of Luck Club by that point. What songs did we love playing? I was really loving playing Misery Guts at the time. I think it just felt, it's a pretty raucous, like almost like atonal but very angular like punk song, which always had like a really special spot in my heart, and the band that I was playing with like just loved getting down and dirty in it. It was very free and fun and yeah, just wild on stage, and that was a real moment in the show for me that I really loved.
You performed some older tracks for us today, or one, that Wes Anderson song that comes off the B Grade University EP, and it just made me think, just a few weeks ago, I was watching the video from your early song with Wall Ball. It was just so fun to see you so long ago and doing that fun and goofy video. Is it fun to go back and, re-experience, revisit older songs? You played Wes Anderson today, and it gives it a little bit of a different flair. I imagine it feels different performing those songs that you wrote so long ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wrote Wes Anderson about 7 years ago now, I reckon, like a very, very long time ago. And, we were talking about back catalogs before, and it's sort of this funny thing, like especially the past couple of years, and I don't really know why. But it seems that Wes Anderson is the back catalog song that people kind of go to when they discover my music. And so, given that, I'm not sort of in the midst of a record cycle, I was like, I'm just going to play Wes Anderson because that seems to be the one that people go back to. And I kind of want to pay like homage to that in this performance. And it's also a song that I really enjoy playing solo, or at least in a more stripped back form, given that was how it was written at the time. It was long before I had a band or of my own for my own project or anything at that point in time, and it's sort of nice to kind of take it back to where it came from. So yeah, that was a reason behind playing that one. And I think the further down the track you go in careers, I don't know if it's the same for you, like with what you do, Cheryl, but like I feel like the further down the path that you go, the more enjoyable it is to look back. Like the more immediate points are a bit like cringe, like when you try to look back on it, or you sort of think that there's something you can change about it. But I feel like the moment that you're far enough to know that like that is the past and it is a moment and it just sort of exists within itself, you kind of appreciate it a bit more or have a bit more fun with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you mentioned being really busy in the past year, and I'm wondering, are you in the process of recording? Are you thinking about recording? Have you already recorded? Are you playing new songs live right now and working them out in front of an audience? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I've been writing a lot. I've been writing, like, since my last record came out, I've written a lot for both myself, but also a lot for other artists, which has been really, really fun. And sort of finding myself kind of a part of these projects that I would have never have thought that I would have been involved in. And I think I did the math recently, and it's something like since releasing my last record, I've like written and contributed to about 100 songs, which is pretty cool. And like, definitely like working towards the like 10,000 hours or whatever. Not really. I just like writing songs, but, I've been doing a lot of that, and I have been recording a new record, which has been really, really fun. And I haven't really had much of a chance to road test much stuff, but I did play a solo set recently in Melbourne. That only came up a couple of days before the actual date, and I decided, I'm gonna play a couple of new songs, and it was really fun and nice to kind of do that and sort of get out of my own, I don't know, like universe for a little bit, or at least like my known universe, and that was a really fun thing to do, and has made me super, super excited to put out new music and like I said, just like make records and write songs. It's the best.
Well, I don't know if it caused any angst for either of you, but you both survived the so-called sophomore slump, releasing 2 incredible second LPs. And I'm wondering, do you feel a sense of freedom when you look to future musical projects?
That's a good question.
No.
I don't know. Freedom.
Like, yeah, I think yes and no. Like, I think that, it's almost like I feel like I'm sort of holding on as tight as I can to the sort of, inhibited, like, early part of your career where you just kind of like, yeah, I'll just do this, or yeah, I'll just do this, yeah, I'll just do this. And I think like the further along you get, it's just, I think, you almost feel like those constraints kind of tighten around you. So I think it takes great skill and experience, both of which I'm hoping for, to sort of break free of those constraints each time you go into the record making process.
Yeah. I actually finally think, like, going back to what we were talking about before with like lockdowns and not being on tour, like, I actually think that has given me a greater freedom to look forward, because like obviously when you're on tour, it's as the artist, it's all retrospective. Like the record's made, the songs are written, like you've played them live, X amount of times. And so it actually is quite a retrospective space that you're always in, which is really cool. And it's great to like nurture what you've made in that way and sort of give it new life with every person that you play it to. But for me, like not being on the road has meant that I've sort of like broken free of those like shackles of looking back, and I can just sort of like be really present and in the moment and kind of think ahead a little bit more, which is really nice. And like, and furthermore, you're not restricted by, how long am I off the road for, and hence how long do I have to make the record and all that kind of stuff. And it's not so much about capturing a moment as it is about just like riding a wave, I suppose, and kind of seeing what happens as it happens and let the process take place as you're kind of figuring it out, which is really nice. I would go as far to say it's actually a bit of a luxury. But that's a very silver linings kind of like
That's
attitude towards this whole situation. But for me, I've actually really enjoyed it.
Well, you got to look for silver linings where you can. And one silver lining for me this year has been that wonderful song, DINO'S, such a successful collaboration. Do you have any plans to write or produce more songs together?
I think like eventually we sort of kept thinking after we wrote that song that we would write more songs together. But I think, we each allow ourselves to kind of live, in our own respective spaces. And we sort of, haven't kind of forced it. So I'm sure it will happen at some point. But yeah, we just need to be in the same room at the same time.
Just not right now.
Not right now. But, yeah.
Well, thank you for collaborating on the beautiful video that you made for us today. It's been such a treat to talk with you, and I look forward to hopefully having you in this room that I'm sitting in right now once you're able to travel over here again. Thank you again so much for all the great music and for taking time today.
Likewise. Thanks
so much, Cheryl.
It's been Alex, Lahey, and Gordi live on KEXP at Home. Thank you so much all for joining us and supporting KEXP. I suggest that you look at our YouTube archive and sign up to get updates and see all the great music that we feature here on KEXP. Thank you again.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.